Welcome. Thanks for being here. I have on my tray 4 bottles of Shalimar, and I cannot, in honest conscience, tell you that 4 is the number I think will get me through what is coming. I bought the 4th one, knowing what I was doing. I bought it the way a woman buys a second freezer when she's heard a particular kind of news. This bottle is Shalimar, and Jacques Guerlain composed it in 1925, and the top note that announces it before any of the rest of it arrives is bergamot, the small green-skinned citrus that grows on the Calabrian coast. The note the entire heritage feminine repertoire has been using as its opening keystone for 100 years. The IFRA amendment that is coming is going to cut the bergamot, not eliminate it, cut it. This is the episode about what happens to a bottle when the next regulatory cut takes the keystone out from under it. These bottles on my tray tell 6 different bergamot stories. 6 different ways the IFRA 52nd Amendment is going to reach in. And I'm telling you this as a collector who has, in the last 3 months, gone online at 11 at night and bought bottles I didn't need, in concentrations, quite frankly, that I already owned. I've read the regulatory text, and I know what the houses are about to do because they've done it every cycle since the 1980s, and they will do it again. I've hoarded bottles there. I've admitted it on camera, and what I'm hoarding against is the rest of this episode. The Shalimar on the shelf today is not the Shalimar Jacques Guerlain composed in 1925. Mitsouko is not the Mitsouko he composed in 1919. The Eau Sauvage you pick up today is not the Eau Sauvage Roudnitska composed in 1966. The 52nd Amendment to the IFRA Standards is the next ingredient cut in a sequence the houses have been navigating since I was in my 20s. There's a version of bergamot with the photoactive compounds taken out. The industry calls it FCF for furocoumarin-free, and the major houses have been working within these constraints since the 1990s. The bergamot in your 1924 or 2025 Shalimar isn't the bergamot in your 1925 Shalimar. A correction I owe you, my dear audience, is I have probably called IFRA the regulator, and it isn't. IFRA is a voluntary trade association whose standards the mainstream houses follow because their retailers, their insurance, their ingredient suppliers, and their export markets all require it. None of that is law. The actual law for European perfume is the EU Cosmetics Regulation, which has a very long number and which bans atronol and chloroatronol outright in finished cosmetics. This is a much stricter rule than IFRA's voluntary one for the same allergens. IFRA tells you what is safe to ship, while the cosmetics regulation tells you what is legal to sell. The houses follow the tighter of the two. The IFRA 52nd Amendment is going to tighten the trade association layer further, but the legal flaw stays where it is. However, more than half of you are watching this from the United States, where the legal flaw is shaped differently. The Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act and the 2022 Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act govern labeling and reporting, not ingredient restriction. California's Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act is the closest state-level analog, and what reaches the American bottle is the same thing that reaches the European one, just through a different door. The amendment bends every bottle on every continent through the same back door. So let's understand the impact of Amendment 52 on the bottles on my tray. Shalimar is a bergamot opening over a vanilla base. The bergamot is the keystone note. And if you take it down by a third, you have not adjusted Shalimar. You have muddied it, because the top collapses into the heart, and the heart collapses into the base, and the whole fragrance goes syrupy, because the citrus brightness is the thing that keeps the balsam from drowning the room. You know, I bought my first Shalimar in 2001, and I've worn it the way a young woman wears a fragrance she hasn't yet earned, which is to say that I sprayed too much of it and I wore it to brunch, and I came home in the afternoon smelling of someone 20 years older than I was, and I didn't care. I loved it anyway. And I have bought Shalimar 3 or 4 times since. One for l'essence over here, one for the souffle over here, and once for the Miasem jasmine. The last 2 of those are flankers, and the 2 of them together are Guerlain quietly teaching its customers to love a version of Shalimar that doesn't lean on the keystone bergamot note. The souffle is the 2014 flanker, and Thierry Vasser composed it. You know, it's much lighter. It's aerial and has less weight in the balsam and less weight in the bergamot. It has far more weight in the jasmine and orange blossom. You know, it's Guerlain's clean girl Shalimar, before the clean girl trend had a name. It's a Shalimar for the customer who finds Shalimar too much. The Miasem jasmine flanker, and let me see, do I have that on my tray? I do. This Miasem jasmine flanker was composed by Delphine Jelk. This has bergamot at the top, but the weight has moved into the jasmine heart, into Indian jasmine sambac and jasmine grandiflorum. It's a Shalimar for the heritage customer who would like to be reassured the bottle is still here. So 2 flankers, 10 years apart by the same house, both flankers moving the center of gravity away from the bergamot keystone Guerlain has known for a decade was going to be cut. I bought the flankers, but I hadn't put it together until I had the bottles on my tray. I guess these bottles will do that to you. The bergamot keystone isn't the loud note, but the keystone note is the critical note nobody talks about until the day a regulator removes it. Eau Sauvage is Christian Dior, created by Roudnitska in 1966. It's a bergamot note over a body of hedione. Hedione's the soft jasmine tea molecule behind half the modern perfumery shelf. The hedione is fine under the amendment, but the bergamot is not. It's the part that's going. It's true that the bottle isn't the 1966 bottle. The current bottle has been losing bergamot, one slow administrative inch at a time, across every cycle, and most visibly through Francois Demachy's tenure at Dior in the 2010s. The IFRA 52 amendment will be the latest cut, but these bottles will survive. Eau Sauvage perfume in 2012 and Eau Sauvage cologne in 2015 are both Demachy fragrances, working the Roudnitska line. The parfum sits lower with more weight in the heady own body, while the cologne sits lighter on top, with the bergamot carrying less of the load. Two flankers, 3 years apart, both pulling the weight off the keystone bergamot note the next cut is coming for. I am not going to claim Dior planned it. Dior's framing on launch was modernizing the heritage portfolio. What I am offering is a reading of this modernization effort. The flankers fit the shape the constraints of the moment were already pressing into any Roudnitska line extension any house would have built, whatever Dior thought it was doing. The flankers are what the fragrance looks like after the next regulatory cut. The Shalimar souffle and the Miocene jasmine fit the same shape. Two houses, two heritage flagships, and several flankers between them across a decade, all moving the center of gravity away from the bergamot keystone note Guerlain and Dior, both new, is going to be cut. The flankers are the regulation-shaped shadow of the original fragrance, and the customer who owns the flanker has already been moved. Let's move to the third bottle that will likely be impacted. This is Acqua di Parma Colonia. It's a 1916 house creation that descends by genealogy from 4711, the original Clonich-Wasser, the original eau de cologne. The formulaic ancestor of every bright citrus note or citrus bottle anybody has ever called summer. The Colonia, the 4711, the entire eau de cologne genre is bergamot and lemon and neroli and petitgrain in roughly equal proportions, and there's no way around it formally. The cologne category itself is exposed. If you have a bottle of cologne in your bathroom that you bought because it was the safest possible thing, the bright and breezy thing that didn't announce itself, the thing the man in your life sometimes also wears, the thing you put on in July because everything else felt heavy, the amendment is coming for that bottle too. It's not just the Shalimars and the Mitsoukos. It's the bottle you thought of as the no-fuss option. You know, the Colonia itself is a very beautiful piece of work. It is, in the way the trade doesn't say out loud, a piece of cultural infrastructure. You know, it's what an Italian man of a certain generation has been splashing on his face after a shave for 90 years. It's also what my friends spray on at the beach when nothing else feels right in the heat. There is a whole way of being in summer that this bottle is responsible for. And I don't know what summer is going to smell like once the next cycle is in the bottles. Eau de cologne is not just a fragrance category. Eau de cologne is a way of being in the heat. The fourth bottle is Mitsouko. And this is where the amendment is going to hit hardest. Mitsouko is Jacques Guerlain again. It's the textbook chypre, a three-legged stool with bergamot at the top, oak moss at the base, and labdanum holding it together. Take any one of the three out and the stool falls over. You know, oak moss was restricted hard in the 2000 cycle, around 2007, just as Thierry Vasser was about to take the in-house seated Guerlain. And the Mitsouko on the shelf today is what is left after that reformulation. And the audible loss long-time wearers have been writing essays about since 2010 is the sound of the oak moss getting shorter. The next cut is the bergamot leg. And the question Mitsouko is about to put to Guerlain is whether a heritage chypre that has already lost a significant portion of one leg can survive losing a significant portion of a second leg. I think one of three things may happen. One, the bottle reformulates and ships thinner than it was, and the long-time wearer notices and writes a forum post. The new wearer never smelled the old one, which is the most common outcome because it holds the revenue. Two, the bottle ships so thin that the marketing department quietly discontinues it and shifts the customer toward a flanker built to survive without the missing leg. This is what happened to Jicky. The fragrance house prefers the second option because it lets them retire a margin-thin SKU without admitting they're retiring it. Three, the bottle ships. The press materials use the word Renaissance, and the heritage customer is invited to fall in love again. The fig tea is Patricia de Nicolaï. Patricia de Nicolaï is Pierre Guerlain's great-granddaughter, and she founded her own house in 1989 after winning the International Prize for Young Perfumers the year before. Fig leaf is also under furocoumarin restriction. Fig leaf. Fig leaf is the note in Philosophos, in Premier Figuier, in Un Jardin, en Méditerranée, the whole fig genre. The one the Mediterranean summer audience has built a personality around. It's on the same list as the bergamot. The IFRA 52 amendment story is being covered as a citrus story, but it is a photoactive compound story, and the compounds appear in places you would never look. Angelica, rue, petitgrain, and neroli, which sit on the bitter orange tree alongside the peel everyone has heard of, all on the same list as the bergamot. The most famous fragrance ever composed, Chanel No. 5, has 3 photoactives at the top. Bergamot, lemon, neroli, which means the eau de cologne segment, 2 bottles back, is exposed twice. Once at the bergamot, once at everything else that goes into the genre. If you have in the last decade decided you are a fig person, or a green chypre person, or a Chanel No. 5 person, or a neroli at the beach person, the amendment is also going to impact you. This is Bandit by Germaine Cellier, 1944. Cellier was one of the first prominent women perfumers in modern French industry, and she worked at Roure and she composed for Robert Piguet, Balmain, Schiaparelli, among others. And Bandit was her leather chypre. It has galbanum at the top. I'm running out of real estate here. Let me see. So it has galbanum at the top, There we go. It has leather at the heart, and it has a furious oak moss and civet base. The bottle that made the leather chypre category, and this is the bottle that ate any room you walked into wearing it. The 1944 Bandit can't ship today. The 1944 Bandit couldn't ship after the oak moss restriction cycle either. This bottle was reformulated in 2012 by Aurélien Guichard, one of the contemporary perfumers I trust most for this kind of work. Guichard rebuilt the entire bottle inside of the modern regulatory frame without pretending the regulation wasn't there, and without pretending he was not working in Cellier's shadow. He built a Bandit that could ship and still announce itself the way Bandit had always announced itself. Nobody understood that that was possible. The 2012 Bandit is neither the 1944 Bandit nor the rumor of it. The 2012 Bandit is the answer to a question Cellier could not have known would be asked. Can you reformulate a heritage bottle inside a regulatory frame she never had to write within and still get the bottle she wrote? Sometimes yes. Sometimes so yes, that the reformulated bottle is its own thing. It is separately defensible, separately beautiful, separately of its moment. The Cellier 1944 Bandit was an act of rage. The Guichard 2012 Bandit is an act of craft under constraint. Both are perfumes. One is a survivor. And you should leave this episode with the survivor in your nose, not Shalimar panicking about the next cut. Bandit, knowing the regulation is part of what made Guichard's work necessary, and the work was equal to it. Reformulation is not loss. Reformulation is what craft looks like when craft is asked to work inside a room the rule makers built. One more bottle, and the bottle that did not get on the dressing table by accident. Dryad is Liz Moores at Papillon Artisan Perfumes 2017. It's a green chypre. It's galbanum and oak moss forward. It has narcissus and jasmine through the heart. It has a bergamot note sitting above all of it. But first, a piece of perfume forum mythology to put to bed. The mythology is that indie perfumers ignore IFRA. They don't. The indies follow the law, but what they do is operate at the upper end of what the law allows. They use legal but unfashionable materials, and they accept that their distribution will be narrower because of it. You will not find Papillon at Sephora, and you will not find Papillon at the airport duty-free, but you will find Papillon on Liz Moore's own website, at Lucky Scent, and at a handful of specialist niche retailers worldwide. On purpose. That is the corner of the market where the industry consensus is not the operative constraint. The legal flaw is. The amendment is going to hit Papillon too. Indie perfumers and the heritage houses draw from the same global producer ecosystem. The Calabrian bergamot growers, the grass natural houses, the oak moss producers in the Balkans and France. They buy at different volumes, sometimes even at different grades, but the supply chain is the same supply chain. When the amendment tightens what those producers can sell, the supply tightens for everyone. Mitsouko has to be reformulated to keep shipping, to keep every department store on every continent. Dryad, only has to remain legal. The cost is real, and Moores has said so out loud in her own words. Dairush Alavi at Persolaise interviewed her in 2015 and asked her the question this segment has been circling around. He said, IFRA standards aren't law. Why did you feel you needed to follow them? Moores answered, in my head, I always wanted to see if the perfumes in a shop, that for me was the biggest accolade. My dream was to be at Les Senteurs. The dream of the indie perfumer is the same dream as the heritage house, the shop, the shelf, the retailer who will not stock you if you do not follow the consensus. Moores also told Persolaise on the doubled allergen load in Tobacco Rose that the industry rules really started getting to me. Both points are true at once. Moores built Papillon as the answer to a question Guerlain cannot answer the same way without breaking the brand. So you have two perfumes, two crafts blending, or should I say bending, under different parts of the same regulatory system. The audience that thinks the indies are the rebels and the heritage houses are the sellouts hasn't understood what either of them is doing. The indie perfumer is not the rebel. The indie perfumer is the woman who's counted what staying small costs and decided to pay it. 4 bottles of Shalimar, 3 bottles of Eau Sauvage, 1 bottle of Dryad. Something I haven't said out loud yet on this channel. You know, I don't know if I bought the 4th Shalimar because I was afraid of what the amendment would do to the bottle. I actually think I bought it because I was afraid of what the amendment would do to me. You know, the bottle's going to survive. Houses have done this every cycle. They'll do it again. What will not survive is the version of myself that lives in the bottle that ships next year. Slightly thinner, slightly muddier, slightly less herself. The amendment bends mainstream toward thinner reformulation and indie toward narrower distribution. The bottle on my tray is about to change. I'm going to keep wearing it. The alternative is a freezer full of the 2024 batch, which is what hoarding gets you in the end. And I don't want to be the woman who has more bottles than years left to wear them in. I want to be the woman who notices what the next bottle is and decides if the next bottle is also her. I have been hoarding the bergamot, and I'm going to stop now.